Text Expander from Smile is supporting this edition of MacVoices. Text Expander can help you be more productive in every single application on your Mac. Find out how at textexpander.com. MacVoices is sponsored by MintMobile. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, a lot of crazy things are going on in the world today, and we are trying to reduce a little bit of that craziness, maybe introduce some normalcy. And so I'm happy to have Charlotte Henry of the Mac Observer back with me to try to achieve that goal. Charlotte, welcome, and what do you think? Do you think we can do it?
I've never been told that I bring normality to any situation, but we'll try today because frankly, we all need it.
Well, I think we do. Well, normality in the idea that we're going to talk about tech stuff. But we also have to throw in a little bit of COVID-19 since, as we record this, and this is such a big part of our lives. Shelter in place and all kind of social restrictions and everything. It's just hard to stay away from it. Isn't
it just? Yeah. Even Apple TV Plus now has a COVID-19 special show with Oprah. We've got special news sections on Apple News everywhere you turn. And I suppose that's the right thing, actually.
Now, we should point out to the listeners that maybe don't know you. You're in London. So
yes,
your
hello from lockdown London.
Yeah. And your perspective may be just a little bit different, although it feels like this, with a very few exceptions, this is kind of everywhere, because I'm on lockdown in Pennsylvania as well. The degrees of lockdown are different in some places, but everybody's trying to practice the social distancing and no travel and all that.
Yeah, all my colleagues, US-based colleagues at the Mac Observer, we're kind of spread out across the US, but as you say, not one of them has been left unaffected by restrictions and those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, something we wanted to talk about was Apple's response to COVID-19. And I know you have, I think, some strong feelings about this, and you just mentioned that the Apple TV show and all, but what has Apple done and how do you feel about it?
Well, to be fair, they've done quite a lot. So today, the day we're recording, which is April 6th, Tim Cook announced actually over the weekend that Apple has used its operations teams, its designs teams, its product teams, its logistics teams, a lot of its high-powered staff and important core teams to source and distribute, design, source and distribute face shield masks. So they're actually using their capabilities within Apple to make masks to help prevent frontline medical workers hopefully getting COVID-19 whilst they're treating other patients. They've also managed to source in total 20 million face masks, the kind of surgical masks that we see people have over their face. So Apple has done those two things. And last week, it also worked with Lorraine Powell Jobs, Steve Jobs' widower, and also Leonardo DiCaprio, obviously, in supporting the America Food Fund. And that's I think between Tim Cook, Lorraine Powell Jobs, and Leonardo DiCaprio, there was $12 million they put in that initially. It's a crowdfunded campaign, so that's going up and up and up, and that's going to help support two organizations that are helping to feed people who are finding it very hard in these circumstances.
So, and I know, Tim has come out a number of times and made different statements about COVID, like so many tech executives, which that's a whole nother discussion that I would love to have sometime, is why tech executives seem to be so much at the forefront of so many of these things as opposed to pretty much any other industry. Listen, every
They've
CEO
got so much money.
Well, yeah, but that's a terrible reason, I think, to expect anybody to have a particular voice. Listen, I know working in my other industry for the day job, I don't know of any company that isn't issuing statements, but the tech folks seem to get so much more attention.
Yeah, I think part of it is because we expect these people who so obviously have so much money and so much ability to give to do so. I also think and as Apple's really showed this with what I described, it's helping to design and make and distribute face shields, and is working with suppliers as well to do so. I think what we also expect actually is they have the ability to do it. But this is obviously we need a very scientifically, technologically driven solution to this. And so the tech companies, I think, feel not only an obligation, but a capability to help, and not just be the companies that make shiny things.
Okay, that's a real good point. That's a real good point. And I do wish that some of the other industrial companies, and I want to be fair, I think early on Tesla came out. Of course, I guess they're a tech company too, but there are a number of companies that have come out and said that they are trying to retool their operations, whatever their operations might be, to provide some of these much needed supplies. And, I mean, let's face it, it's kind of difficult for some organizations or some manufacturing companies to do that, because you're right, they either don't have the technical know-how or just they're not in the right kind of business to retool and produce that stuff.
Yeah, and look, these companies have amazing logistics facilities, operations facilities, production facilities. They do have the resources, and frankly, are people buying so many of their products at the moment anyway? Is the demand so high? I'd suggest not. So, it's probably as good a time as any way to do these things and make these charitable and kind of wider community statements. Question actually I thought of for you, having watched Apple for even longer than I. Do you think Apple would have responded in the same way under Steve Jobs? We know Tim Cook has really upped the philanthropic work of Apple since taking over. And do you think Steve Jobs would have done the same as Apple is doing now if he'd still been leading the company?
Charlotte, I know that you're going to see my answer as a bit of waffling. I kind of doubt it, but I also think that Steve's. I've made this point before under different circumstances, but the world Steve lived in was a lot different. There wasn't the social media. There wasn't the social pressure. There wasn't the acceptance of social issues with a lot of the tech companies and all. I mean, that was seen as if anything, that was just getting started or was seen as a bit of an abnormality. So if I really do believe that if Steve had been called upon by the president or industry or society, that if he could have risen to the occasion, yes, I think he would have. But I also think it was a different time, and Steve was a different kind of CEO for that time.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Steve Jobs would have taken on any kind of innovation challenge. That is for sure. Yeah, and did have a broader world. He certainly did have a broader worldview.
Oh, absolutely.
And sense of community and global community.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you saw that, and I think it came to be seen as maybe just sort of window dressing. But at the end of pretty much every Macworld keynote that I attended, Steve would always, ask the Apple employees to stand up and recognize them. And so, and that may be.
Was that before or after he dropped the iPhones they just made in a fish tank?
Well, no,
I'm teasing.
Oh yeah, no, but I mean, Apple has always worked their employees very hard, but also I think appreciated them, and I felt like that was appreciation. So
there's a reason why a lot of people want to work for Apple.
Exactly. And that's a really, really interesting question, and I think that you just have to look at it within the perspective of the time that was versus the time that is.
I'd imagine, given that the focus, for obvious tragic reasons, Steve Jobs took towards medical care and medical funding and research funding towards the end of his life, I imagine this has been something he would have liked to contribute to.
I would agree. And, there's been a lot written about Steve's approach to his own illness, but I don't think that Steve ever really necessarily completely rejected the basics of traditional medicine. So I don't think that would have been an issue. I think he would have. I think he would have stepped up. Certainly, the Apple that he ran did not have all the money or all the resources at the Apple that there is now either. So, just so many different factors, that
and probably if he'd
here.
wanted to do a big logistics and operations initiative, he'd have needed Tim Cook anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Tim, get on the plane to China. Well, maybe not to China.
I was going to say probably not. No.
Yeah. So this is a dangerous question, but is there more that Apple could do short of just writing checks, do you think? Or do you think that their response is appropriate?
I have to say, I think Apple individually as a firm and the tech companies in general, I should have mentioned that America's Food Fund that I mentioned. So Jeff Bezos of Amazon obviously is also putting huge amounts of money to those kind of initiatives as well. So that's just another example. I think the tech community has stepped up. I think, look, perhaps it's all slightly been influenced by the fact that Santa Clara County in California has been particularly badly hit, as I understand it, in the US. And so they feel it's their community as well. It's not just a global issue. It's very personal to a lot of people in the tech industry. So I think that's all contributed to it. But yeah, I think Apple has stepped up. We know they have a lot of money and could probably do as much, could almost keep writing checks continuously. But ultimately, they are a private company. And while they should do philanthropic things, which they do, I'm not sure how, it feels uncomfortable to say they should do more and just keep adding zeros to checks. I think what they're doing, which I like, is very practical things, because actually in a way it's easier to write a check and say, we've done our part, thanks very much. Actually putting the resources of a company like Apple into practice to help, I think is very admirable.
This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Text Expander by Smile. The odds are that if you're working from home and will be for the foreseeable future. You are answering the same questions for clients over and over all day, and your coworkers and employees are probably doing the same thing. And that's where Text Expander can help. With Text Expander, you can craft the perfect answer to your frequently asked questions, put it in a snippet, then insert it into an email or a text message or a social media post with just a few keystrokes. Better than that, you can then share that across your entire organization so that everyone is delivering a consistent, high-quality message. That cuts down on confusion, mixed messages, and inaccurate information. That saves time in answering those questions and saves time by preventing follow-up questions. And company-wide snippets are just part of the story. Snippets can be customized to insert various specifics from a pre-created list so that your messages can be even more customized for your clients, yet consistent and accurate. And no matter what platform you're working on, Mac, iPhone, iPad, Windows, Chrome OS, or where you're working, home, office, car, in the backyard, in the basement, Text Expander is there for you to make you more productive and more consistent. Now, I can't understand why you wouldn't be using Text Expander, but if you haven't seen the light yet, you can visit TextExpander.com right now to give it a try for free. You will be up and running in minutes and being more productive immediately. Again, visit TextExpander.com for your free trial. Text Expander from Smile. See what all their world-class software can do for you at smilesoftware.com/podcasts. Thanks to Smile for being the longest-running sponsor of MacVoices. I am so glad to hear you say that. And I didn't, that was not a setup, folks. That was a genuine answer. Because I think there is this attitude that, they have all the money, so they could do this and they could do that. And, you could say that too about Amazon and about a lot of different companies, but you are right. At the end of the day, there is a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders. And if Brian Chaffin were here, he'd probably slap me. I know that. But
metaphorically, Brian is not a violent man. Let's be clear.
Well, no, but I've been known to push him, not to the point of violence, but.
That's just, we call that Thursday, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think that there has to be this measured response. And, the other thing too is you don't know what may yet be coming. So both from Apple and circumstantially from COVID-19.
Yeah. Now, here's an interesting thing I want to get your perspective on, because I did actually disagree with Brian on this. I said Apple should not be releasing an iPhone probably this year while this crisis is ongoing. Never mind that there's probably less demand for it, which there almost certainly would be. And never mind that we know and have reported on extensively that the supply chain has been hit. Even if all those things could be balanced, the idea of Tim Cook going on a stage and waving a shiny new device while the world is in a bit of a meltdown didn't feel right to me. Now, Brian thought, actually, I won't speak for him. You can listen to the Mac Observer's Daily Observation podcast that we did. But he basically didn't agree with me. He thought, people can choose what they want to do. If they want to buy it, they could buy it. And, Apple could release a new product in a press release like they did with the new Airs and Minis and those kind of things. Just it was a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, it made me feel uncomfortable, and it was interesting. The weekend before we were recording this show, we expected there to be a new iPhone 9, SE2, whatever you want to call it. Now, as we're recording this, we haven't heard that product exists yet. And that's interesting to me. But, did Apple make a last-minute decision not to do that? Did they realise did they think there was a PR problem? We probably will never know. I'd love to know. We probably will never know. But it's an interesting another angle, I think.
I by the way, I did listen to your argument versus Brian's on TDO. And I know where you're coming from. I think, though, that once again, you have to step back and look at the bigger picture. It's not like Apple just decides today to snap their fingers. No, we're going to release a new iPhone. There have been months, if not years, of planning that go into that. There have been months of production, because we all complain if they announce, the new iPhone SE, whatever, today, and I want one and I can't get it for 3 weeks. Well, that's a failure. Come on. You announced it. I want it. And so,
and we want something new every year. We must have something new every year, Chuck.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I know I saw a couple pieces of people were a little critical of the announcements Apple already made, the new Mini and those things. And it's like, I think you're missing the point here. Those were on a schedule somewhere, and there are warehouses full of them. And we're back to sort of that fiduciary responsibility. Okay, is it better to have them on sale, or is it better to not have them on sale, hoping we can announce them later to make a bigger splash? I think you put them on sale when you're ready. I mean, it probably might not be the best exact time. Maybe you do wait a week or two for sort of a lull in this particular situation, if there is such a thing as a lull, and try to get it out there. But I think there's a momentum to some of these things that people don't really understand. It's just the perception that, oh well, Apple should not have done this right now. Well, okay, here's a poor example, but I just saw again that the new James Bond movie has been delayed.
Right.
The new Top Gun movie has been delayed. How many other of these things been delayed?
Oh, I've reported, I think every week at one point we were reporting of a delay to an Apple TV Plus show, to a movie that was trying to make whatever.
Right. Now, I would assume that some of those bigger movies were in the can. There was no more editing to be done. They were ready to go. But for obvious reasons, those things made perfect sense to delay.
Yeah, well, hang on. So some of the movies went straight to streaming, didn't they? They made them available earlier on streaming services or iTunes and those kind of things. The Apple TV Plus stuff. So, for example, The Morning Show, there's no Series 2 of The Morning Show because they were literally filming it and then couldn't film it.
Right.
And there were other shows in that sense. But yeah. I mean, I have to say, I didn't particularly object to Apple releasing, the Mac Mini, the Air, even the new iPad Pro, which, by the way, I really want. Looks really nice. I didn't particularly object to that. There's something quite specific about the iPhone, right? That's kind of is now the flagship Apple product and has been for a number of years. Announcing the new iPhone is a big deal, even for people who don't spend their day reading tech news like we do. And so I think that does look different.
It looks different, and maybe, I mean, your point about him about Tim Cook going up on a stage somewhere, which probably, frankly, would be an empty stage because of all the
Right.
social distancing. That may feel a little bit strange. On the other hand, if it is a device that they can put into people's hands, even just through home delivery, that makes a difference in those people's lives, and I'm talking about a significant difference, then yeah, I think it's okay. So
Yeah.
I don't have the problem with it that you do. Because I guess I take that bigger picture look at it and say, okay, now this, I think maybe the more interesting question is, if they do this, then do we see the iPhone and the new flagship iPhone in the fall? What do we see in 2021? Do some of those things get pushed back because so many of the schedules now have been disrupted?
Yeah, I mean, this knock-on effect will go on for, 18 months? If you're, maybe as individuals, our lives start to return to normal, we hope in not too distant a future. But for a company, that's going to go on for ages. Now, Apple isn't the type of company that needs to worry about going bust. It's worrying more about whether it can get back over $1 trillion market cap or not. Apple's not worrying about things in those terms, but demand matters, selling products matters, and as you're right about the scheduling as well. Like, this stuff matters. It takes a long time, and it particularly matters to Tim Cook, and so for it to go. For the knock-on effect, we will feel it for a while. For Apple, for loads of different companies. And the only company that's doing well out of it at the moment is Zoom and Amazon.
Yeah. Bring me back to Amazon. I want to make sure we touch on that. But, I think you're right. And this, of course, this is one of the things that bothers me so much about all the focus and reporting on the supply chain, that, we think we know, that this is the new SE form factor, and this is what the colors will be and everything. It's like, when Apple's ready to announce it, and if they decide they need to wait a couple weeks, a couple months because of this, because right now all the angst that we're talking about here is because of that supply chain reporting. Otherwise, we'd have no idea.
Yes, yeah, and I mean, look, I'm as guilty as anyone. I do some of that supply chain reporting and pick up on, research notes we hear about. Someone's heard something in a Taiwanese factory. We all do this stuff.
So it's your fault, is what you're saying?
It normally is, Chuck. It normally is.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. And there was a really interesting story that I highlighted on the Mac Observer just last week, which made us think that was going to be a new iPhone over maybe Sunday. Was that there were products gone into shops like Best Buy, seemingly designed for this iPhone 9, SE2, whatever, and with a date of April the 5th, a merchandising date of April the 5th. Did Apple decide to stop that at the last minute? Doesn't seem a very Apple-y thing to do, but there's a discrepancy somewhere. Which
sort of makes my point too. If there are accessories that were supposed to be available, those accessories had to be communicated. The information had to be communicated to other manufacturers to have them ready on the
these were third party. Yeah, these were third-party products, and not Apple iPhone cases. These were third-party products.
Right. Yeah. So, but sort of in keeping with the discussion of what Apple's doing and is it adequate, I did want to just touch on Amazon for a second to get your thinking. Now, I'm not sure what has happened in the UK, but here in the States, Amazon has sort of suspended the Amazon Prime thing for the most part, and is giving priority to those items which are, I think, medically oriented or a bit more oriented to the real needs of daily living for folks, as opposed to just, I want that shiny new thing. You think is that appropriate? Is that a good idea? And how long does that go on? Because once Amazon pulls that off, then do they start to look bad?
I haven't noticed any dramatic changes in Amazon's distribution. I haven't been particularly using it much. I got a little accessory for my Fitbit the other day. But that's the only thing I've noticed recently that's changed. But
okay.
And the other thing actually is, which also affects Apple, is a bit of degrading of streaming quality. We know that's happening. All of them in Europe, this is a particular problem that streaming firms are having to remove and degrade the bandwidth they're using for streaming content. And that has hit Amazon Prime Video. But no, I can't say I haven't been on Amazon that much recently, but I can't say I particularly noticed and not heard from any friends or family there's been a particular downturn in quality in speed of delivery. I mean, there probably is a little bit because there's more people ordering stuff online instead of going to shops, but I've not noticed that particularly in the UK.
MacVoices is supported by MintMobile. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/MacVoices. I'm a big fan of doing things better and cheaper, but only if it really is better and it really is cheaper. That's why Mint Mobile really got my attention when I found out that I could get their cellular service for $15 a month. The question was, is it as good or better than what I'm using? I didn't want dropped calls or lack of coverage or limited data plans or all of those other things that can be a real pain when you're trying to get things done. What I found was that with Mint Mobile, my coverage was at least as good, sometimes better, than my old plan from one of the big carriers. Their data plans can be had for 3, 8, or 12 gigs of 4G LTE data, and I get to keep my old phone and my old number, and all my contacts stay in place. What I didn't get was having to pay for the overhead that the big carriers charge you for: kiosks, mall stores, and staff that are glorified order takers. Mint does business all online to keep the costs down, but the service is right up there with the big boys. So do yourself a favor. Go to mintmobile.com/MacVoices and cut your wireless bill to $15 a month. That's $15 a month for great coverage and lots of data without giving up your phone or your number at mintmobile.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Mint Mobile for their support of MacVoices.
Then maybe it is the U.S. and maybe it's just the things that I've been looking at. But I know I needed a couple of supplies here that that helped me work from home, and just where I would have expected them in the past to say, okay, order today, get Wednesday or Thursday. It's like, okay, it'll be next Wednesday or Thursday, and that's not. And I am not complaining because
No.
I think they're doing the right thing to prioritize those things that people really need for their health and well-being. I just think it's an interesting thing, and it'll be interesting to see when they decide to pull back on that.
Yeah, I think there has been probably is a little slower delivery time. Although I've still, as I say, the most recent thing I bought on Amazon, I still got next day delivery.
Okay.
And it was a really not important product in the slightest.
Yeah. So, well, and you mentioned the streaming, and I thank you because that's something that I haven't had the opportunity to say on the show. I know I've seen a couple things degraded, and that includes some playback of this show. That what I upload, the quality I upload to YouTube or Facebook or Vimeo, is not necessarily the quality that's being played back at. And it's something that, I think I want to make sure everybody knows that, no, we're not suddenly, getting sloppy with our quality. It's a sign of the times. But
I actually asked Chuck to degrade the quality to hide all my blemishes.
No, but am I right on that? Isn't there, the European area has been a lot more stringent about that, I think, haven't they?
So the European Union, I think, basically told all streaming services to cut bandwidth usage by 25%. That was Amazon Prime TV, that was Apple TV Plus, that was Netflix very significantly. And YouTube, I think, although I actually haven't noticed this when I've looked, was meant to be turning off HD as the default. It was meant to be presenting videos in standard definition by default, and then you could choose to change it to HD or even 4K, depending. But actually, I'm trying to remember, maybe YouTube even got rid of 4K for a while. But anyway, they definitely were meant to make it HD by SD by default, and I haven't noticed that, but that's what was asked, and they said they were doing it. But yeah, the big streaming services have really had to reduce their bandwidth. And in fact, Disney Plus launched in the UK and a few other European countries during all of this, and actually arrived with a press statement saying, we're sorry, the quality is not as good as we would like, but we're trying to help. Hope you enjoy Disney princesses while everything's miserable.
And, and that's the way to do it. I mean, because again, here we are, there's a schedule. They promised it, they delivered it, but they also were transparent about the fact that, hey, we're trying to help, so we're not going to take up as much bandwidth.
I mean, I can't, if I'm being crude, I can't think of a better time for a comforting streaming service with lots of content for children. I can't think of a better time for it to launch. But
no, I agree with you, because I think
I suspect there are a lot of parents who are very, very grateful for Disney Plus right about now.
Yeah, I feel bad because it's tough enough on the adults, but on the kids, they don't understand. I'm not sure all the adults understand, but that's another discussion. But the kids, that's tough. It really is very difficult.
Sure.
So how have you been dealing with this? Have you been? You're obviously on lockdown at home.
London is in lockdown. I live in an apartment by myself, which is slightly testing the bounds of mental capabilities. The nice thing about coming on this show is I actually had to, brush my hair, put on some makeup, make myself quite almost civilized. But no, look, like everyone, I'm kind of binge watching things. I'm up to series 5 of Brooklyn Nine-Nine now. I've been too much FaceTime. I think this is going to be the interesting thing. I'm FaceTiming my little niece. I'm FaceTiming my friends. I'm FaceTiming my family. And it's, that's really upping all our screen time. And I think that'll be a very interesting, it'll be interesting to see how that kind of affects people in a few weeks. Because I know even I feel a bit headachy, goss. But my eyes feel a bit tired. We all get that. We all know we look at screens too much anyway.
Interesting. Because you're right. I know that a lot of people are doing a lot of screen time. I guess maybe because I do too much already that I really haven't noticed any of those negative effects.
I mean, likewise, I'm always reading something on the iPad, looking at my phone, watching a video or streaming. I'm exactly the same. But actually, I think, the fact that you're not maybe going out, and the people you're talking to on FaceTime, you maybe would have gone and seen and sat at a restaurant and not taken out your phone for an hour or two. Those kind of things, I think, are making a bit of a difference.
Yeah. And I think it's a testament to the way the internet was constructed and conceived all those years ago, that it's been able, for the most part, to handle this. I mean, yes, we just talked about some of the bandwidth capping for the streaming services, but I've heard very little about internet outages, in spite of the fact that every business I know wants to do a Zoom meeting or a GoToMeeting or some kind of virtual meeting, and and kids are doing homeschooling now through those same video services, and we're recording this through that video service, and so all those things are happening and happening very, very easily and very effectively.
Yeah.
So it could have been a real mess.
I mean, I've been thinking quite a lot recently how I can't imagine going through something like this without the internet.
That's the first part of our discussion with Charlotte Henry, covering Apple's responses to COVID-19. In the next section, we get into a discussion of the iPad, 10 years of the iPad, what Charlotte has, what Charlotte uses, her thoughts on it being a production versus a consumption device. And she also tries to talk me into a particular iPad accessory. We'll see if that happens. Until the next time, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.